If your ink's too slow and your nib won't flow, here's one of the places that you can go. Larry is here to see you through with Mr. Announcer and Cubby too. It's Larry's Fountain Pen Reviews.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's Zoom time, and welcome to Elyce. Yeah, from Heinz Pen Company. And
Actually, she's Starry Night.
I beg my pardon. I'm always corrected by somebody. Oh, the membranes just aren't working. Actually, this is the Starry Night, the one and only, the incredible Starry Night, and they are incredible. For real. Mike and I have been talking about them, seeing them. They really, I'm not just blowing your bubble, they really come out fantastic. And I hope people catch on when they see this. If they want a good looking pen, there it is. All right, I'm going to let you take the show for a while and tell us how your journey started, how you even got involved, how difficult it is to work right there with the husband and the people you work with, and all the ups and downs you have, and let it out. Let that stress and anger out, because we do have a doctor in the house. Okay.
Oh, okay. So when Jim and I got together, it was, you know, he had said to me when we very first met, he's like, so I make fountain pens, right? And I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. And kind of sort of watching the process. And we went to the Dallas show, was our first show together. And my daughter was like way excited about the show. She brought her best friend, and Nora was like, oh, we get to go to the pen museum, you know? And so we spent a couple hours at the pen show and, you know, just kind of got sucked into it that way. And then the more we were together, he was pouring resin and I was just kind of watching. And I've always been a very artsy kind of person. I love colors. I love paint. I love anything craft related. And so I started just watching him going, so that's all you have to do. He was like, yeah, you know, that's it. And I'm like, well, what if you did like this? And he's like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, well, have you tried it? You know? So, yeah, so we started doing the papier plume blank back when Patrick wanted to do the blues. And so he was like, I'm having a hard time getting these colors. He's like, I can't get them just right. And his resins were absolutely stunning, but Patrick wanted like this certain feel of the colors. So that's when I was like, well, okay, let me help you. And I went over and I pulled out all these blues, right? And I'm like, started mixing colors and started, you know, trying to get the feel for what matched the ink, you know? And so we put it together and Patrick was like, yes, that's it. And so I helped with all of those. We wrote down a little recipe and everything, and there they went. And then the next big thing was the macaws that went out. And I just fell in love with the Camelot macaw. It was stunningly beautiful colors. And they were bright, they were vibrant. And when I started pouring them, I remember Jim going, okay, are you gonna swirl? I'm like, no, I don't want to swirl. He's like, what do you mean you don't want to swirl? I'm like, I don't want to swirl. I want it to streak like it has feathers. And so he's like, have at. And so I just stuck the stick in and went, shoo. And then when they came out, you saw the definite streak, like the feathers and the colors blended together. And I was like, yes, it came out. They were just so stunning. And the colors were just spot on. So after that, I just, you know, it was like anything with color. I'm like, oh, let's try this, you know, or looking up on Pinterest if, you know, different color palettes, different artwork, photographs that, you know, just that I enjoyed seeing, you know. Our second St. Louis pen was the Gecko pen, and it was matched the green ink. And I'm not necessarily a big green person, but as I was looking up and doing some research into the green geckos and stuff, that little gecko popped out. I was like, yes, that's it, because I'm a very much a big animal person to begin with. So I saw the little gecko. I was like, yes, that's it. So that's where I find most of my inspiration, was from pictures, photographs, anything in nature. And then if there's an animal, something in there, then I'm definitely all in. So it definitely worked on that one.
So when was your first time to start mixing?
Pretty much between the blues pen and the macaws. So
how was your nerves? I mean, were you like, is this going to work? Are they going to get mad at me? Is it going to be a flop? That first experience, that's what I want to hear.
I was more interested in seeing how the colors were going to interact and to get the swirl just right. And then not only, because I could pour like 4 rods, they'd come out great, but then it was, can I duplicate that and make them all look the same? And once I figured out, how the resin works together, then it just made it a whole lot easier to be like, oh, I've got this. I know the steps in the process.
Right.
And then with the narwhal pours, it's because I'm doing 500 at a time. That's a lot of rods, and making sure that you've got the muscle memory that goes into it to make sure that you're putting in the right amount of mica, in the right order, and that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily is it going to flop? It's more, can I replicate it over and over again? That's my moment of trepidation, like, oh my gosh, is it gonna replicate?
Well, I have to say, I really do think you have developed a unique style that's recognizable. I could really describe it or put it into words, but when Mike showed us the ones you had done, to me, they looked very consistent, would be, I guess, a word to use.
Thank you.
So I'm going to interject here. I decided to pop in and see how she's doing. The one thing, I've used a lot of over the years. And yes, I know I'm biased, guys, but the consistency she gets is second to none. I really have not seen anybody in a 250 or a 500 rod batch with that same level of, I know what the hell that rod is. Everything's proportional. Yes, maybe the swirls are a little different because fluid dynamics being what it is, there's some things you can't control. But as she said, that muscle memory, the right amount of mica, out of 500, tiger blanks, that narwhal year of the tiger, you look at all of them, sure, there's some variation, but you know exactly what it is. And that's unprecedented, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Elyce and Jim, the other night, Mike and I were talking a little bit about Elyce's work, and I think the proof is in the pudding. No one has to be biased or nothing. They can just tell if they have any experience with pens and how they're made and how they look and how they develop into what they are. They would see the craftsmanship and the love that's put in it, and it'll speak for itself. And Jim got through showing me something like, wow, look at this pen, man. This pen is stunning. It just knocks your rocks right off. So Elyce, congratulations. You passed the Jim Hines test.
Yeah, we were at the Dallas show, and I was looking at the table, and what started out is, I have my little corner, and it's like, pretty soon it's like, oh, well, that one's mine, and this one's mine, and this is a resin of mine, and oh, look, and here's all these guys too, and really the mermaid line was the one that kind of jump started it all.
Yeah.
Because it was all of mine that, you'd look at them and go, oh, these colors would look really good together. Let's try it out. And then, we were like, oh, okay, well, we can do the mermaids. And, and then I took over with, they have to have an M name because, it's the whole alliteration aspect of it too. So You know, the mermaids are kind of like, they're special. So, you know, people were like, oh, why don't we do this for the mermaids? I'm like, no.
So do you have any idea that you can share coming up for Thanksgiving or Christmas? Just ideas.
You know, I haven't even gotten that far yet. I know I've got 2 resins that I need to get on the website for fall. One is called Falling in Love, and then the other one is Purple Maze, and lots of oranges and purples, and just really just dramatic colors. I went to SoCal to the Makers Turner, the Turner's gathering there, and I got some eye candy mica powders that are stunningly beautiful with color. So I've been playing a lot with eye candy micas. So that's kind of on the
Elyce, in
yes.
2015, there was a
I just had this is an elementary question because I don't know anything much about what you're doing, but is your finished product, your part of it, the rods that they make the pins out of?
Yeah,
Okay.
Mine are just the rods. I
Okay.
do also make some like little rectangular prisms that would be more for like kit pens and that kind of stuff. But I really enjoy doing the rods. Like, given that it's going into a silicone mold that you can't see the whole length of the rod, like, and being so short, it's, you know, you have to kind of judge, you have to figure out how deep that reservoir is for the resin. But it's, to me, that's just the fun part of it, of making sure that all the colors are blending, that you're not putting them in too early, you're not waiting too late, and then you end up with like this gummy plastic mess that nobody wants.
Are the silicone molds, are they like several tubes side by side, or do you just do one at a time? Or to get this consistency, that's got to be pretty difficult.
It can be. So the molds, they're tall rectangular prisms. There's 4 rods in one of the molds.
How many?
There's 4.
4 in each one. Okay.
Depending on how many colors I'm using, then I'm able to do more molds at a time. So with this current project I'm working on, I've got 3 molds going at a time. So it's a matter of the timing aspect of knowing when to pour so it's not too soon. And then making sure I've got it in the molds and into the pot before it gets like really sticky hard. So
do you pour from the top down, or do you inject and pull it up through it?
So what I do is I pour from the top down, and I end up generally with like a count system to get where each rod has the same count of the color that goes in there. Then to get the swirl aspect, I've got bamboo skewers that I duck down in there, and I can swirl, stick down and then pull out if I want streaks, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
There's a certain time limit you have after you pour the resin before it starts getting unusable.
Yeah, it's once you mix parts A and B. So the resin I'm using right now, the Alumilite, it's the fast, which generally, if you have it out at room temperature, you have about 7 minutes to get the colors mixed in the tubes and in the pot, which is really, really fast. So we talked to Curtis, who's like, oh, well, you can put part A in the fridge. So we have our extra fridge that has bottles of resin and little cups at various stages of, you know, waiting to be chilled. And then I can get usually about 15 minutes of a work time. And I like to have them in the pot and have it filling up with about 2 minutes to spare. That's kind of.
And then the machine itself is sort of like a pressure cooker.
It's a kind of like a pressure cooker, but no heat. So you use the air compressor to put air in, and
They're
it
they're
helps.
actually commercial paint pots.
Yeah.
Huh. So have you ever had just a really bad day that everything went wrong?
Yes. Yes.
Uh-oh. And how did Jimmy act? Freaked out?
No, actually, he's been out of town all week, and I messaged him on Wednesday, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I spilled a half a cup of part B resin, like all in the middle of this thing, right? Like, everything was sticky. He's like, just walk away. Like, don't fight it. Just walk away. Come back to it. And that's been the great part of him being an artisan pen maker too, because he'll have days like that where he goes out in the shop and he comes in, he's like, okay, I've blown up 3 tops. Like,
Right.
I'm done, and we just kind of put it on hold and go back to it. But one of the worst ones I had was I had poured purple people eaters, and it was a really good mix of the purples. Like, they were stunning. And I put them in the pot, and I opened up the pot after, an hour and a half, and one of the molds had just tumped over. And so I had this like purple gob of yuckiness, like just rubbery, like awfulness. I was like, no, not the purple people eaters.
The question I wanted to ask, if you can answer it, because I don't have any answers, and Doc may be able to help put some info on it. I've always wondered, like, Japan puts these beautiful red pens out, they're fully red. Doc, you know what I'm talking about?
Red pen, you're not talking about lacquered pens, right?
Could be, yeah. Yeah,
That's
they're
a different
beautiful.
thing altogether. Those are generally ebonite pens. They can be plastic too, but with the lacquer, urushi lacquer over it, that's something very different. You might be speaking of something else though, Larry. You talking about like the Miki Emperor, the red one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lacquer. That's a urushi coating on there. It's a tree resin. They come in various colors, but it's a pretty laborious process to do that. So, but it can be done over. I know John Brooks has done it over plastic, over resin, and a whole bunch of different things.
So real quick, at least, can you pour that stuff, or you have to have certain materials to do that?
I know for the Urishi stuff, that's like a whole different
That's a total,
process.
yeah.
That's like
Totally
completely different. Like, that's a whole new beast.
That's based on ebonite, right?
Well, it can be. Usually, it is.
Okay.
And so what would happen is if Jim was going to do it there, he would have to turn the pen, and then you generally cut the threads deeper if you want a urushi on the threads. So John Brooks told me that, and then it's a real laborious process, coating, little bit by little bit, and then to polish it up to a high luster. And there are some people actually develop allergies to that if in the powdered form and liquid form. Yeah. Jim or Elyce, you guys know what these are not? When we talk about the resins you guys use, they're parts A and B, right? Like epoxy resins.
Yeah.
It's a urethane based
monomer,
resin,
right? Like a methyl methacrylate or anything like that.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like that. It's really a urethane based resin.
Okay.
There's no MEKP like you would PR to accelerate the curing process.
Yeah, just make sure it's not, some of those things are pretty nasty to breathe in.
Epoxy can be a little crazy, but it's too soft. It's heat deflection temperature.
Yeah.
It's about 180 degrees, where Lumalite is like 240. So you can sand a cap or a barrel and actually compress it just from the heat generated from sanding.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And Larry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Urishi stuff, Larry, that's actually based on, it's resin based on the poison ivy. So by default, everybody's allergic to it unless you're immune to poison ivy. But once it's cured, it's generally benign, but some people still over time develop an allergy to it, even in its cured state.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's all we need. Why not? So, Mr. Elyce, how about, do you still help make the pens? Jim has, 3 people, I think, making pens still. You still do that, or you just pour?
I'm just pouring, but then like when we get closer to shows or we have a big order going out, I help polish. So I'm kind of on the beginning and the ending phase of the pen process.
How is the quality control on your end, since you do the pouring and not the making?
You know, it's you have to really watch the time. You have to watch the temperatures of the resin. You have to watch the pots to make sure they don't come unpressurized, if that makes sense. Because if they lose pressure, then the air bubbles aren't going to come out. So it's really a matter of making sure, one, everything's mixed properly. It's in the pot in the right amount of time. And making sure that the pressure pot does its thing. And then also two, making sure that it's cured long enough prior to the pen being made.
Because knowing Jim, if people really know Jim on a personal level, he's really picky when it comes to his pens. I mean, that's his livelihood, that's his pride, that's his love, that's his heart. And, for Jim, it's either got to be right or he doesn't sell it. It's got to be done right because it represents you all. So that's one thing people need to keep in mind, that when y'all put a pen out, I can assure people, and I would stand behind Jim, that this pen's going to be top notch. Right. That's how Jim is. And he does get upset when he doesn't come out right. I was there once when he was making a pen for me, and it broke.
Yep.
That was kind of interesting, So, and this is one of the things that Jim was telling me, it can break at any time. And you go through this long process and bam, it's gone. It just, has that ever happened to Mike Green? Mike, can you answer that question?
He's shaking his head.
Yes. Oh, yes. I relate to this very much. And I imagine, I haven't, I just finished a pen where I did something like that, and it's really sad because you could put a lot of time, as you were saying, you're working on a part, you've gone through maybe a couple hours of work with it, or more, depending on what the part is, and you make a mistake at the last part of it, bang, it's gone, you start over again, and that can be kind of frustrating, definitely. But
yeah, I think
you have to be patient, and I think the pouring is like that too. As you were saying, I have not done any pouring. I don't play a pen pourer on TV or anything like that. I can only relate by seeing videos and stuff. But I could just imagine me getting in there and just going, as you were saying, da, 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 da. Oh, I just dumped part B all over the table. Oh, that's sad, And as you said, once you start this process, now that's the thing, you're mixing these two parts together. Once you put those two parts together, you've got 7 minutes, right?
Yeah, you're committed like that. To it, like you're going.
So, and on all these things where you have, like, I don't know, a half dozen colors or a dozen colors or whatever, how many colors you've got a cup typically with each one. You're pouring in the two parts and mixing like mad. You go online and see people doing this with videos where they're just stirring around like mad, and then they have to pour it all in. That from the moment they put those two pieces together, the stirring and the pouring, as Elyce was saying, you have 7 minutes to do all of that and then get it into the pot and pressurize it. So just imagine, I can just imagine how much fun that can be sometimes.
Now, Elyce, don't you still have a day job?
I do. I am pardon the dogs. I am a dyslexia interventionist in elementary school.
Okay.
So I work with students ages like 7 through 5th grade up to about 10 to teach them how to be better readers.
So what time do you actually start your pen duties? Hi, Jimmy. Go ahead.
Generally my day starts, I have to be at school by 7:15. Then I go pick up my daughter, take her to dance, run to the grocery store, make dinner, and then generally it's probably about 7:30 or so when I'll start pouring resin. Weekends are better pouring time for me, just because I've got more time to focus on it and make sure that it's done. When you leave the house at 7 o'clock in the morning, you get home at 7:30 at night, it makes for a really long day. So
how many different blanks do you have that you've done already? Or you just do one, or
I have probably between 10 and 12 on the website right now. I've got
Okay.
2 new ones. Of course, all the mermaids that are on Jim's line. I've got a bunch of them that, and then my Pinterest board too has tons. Like I have a whole board just for resin ideas. So
Yeah.
if I'm wanting to explore, do something, I'm like, oh, this one really talks to me today. Here, let's do this one. And that's pretty much how I get the new rods. So
Between the Starry Nights line that she has on her site and what she's done for us and in collabs, she's probably done 40 to 45 rods, unique rods.
that's pretty cool. So then, what is the hardest one that's selling? That's moving.
oh, you know, it's the Phoenix was a really good, that one was just awesome. That was my first 7-color pour. The mermaids, and then Jim's Mercurial Mermaid, that just with the greens and the ghost greens are just stunning. So, and then anything with
By chance, do you pour any pink colored ones or white ones?
do we have any what?
Pink or white? Just solid pink or solid white?
You know, I don't. We did do the ghost pen. Was that, babe, was that 2 years ago?
Okay.
We did the Fantasmas for Halloween. And that one was
That
all,
was last year.
yeah, it was like all of the ghost pigments that were just beautiful. So I did get a pack of micas from Eye Candy. It's a 10-color pack of all whites. So I'm dying to play with those and see the differences between the whites.
I have a question about the materials there, and this is probably going to make the pen community throw me out because I'm sure everybody already knows this. My knowledge of pens is just out of some pieces. What I was thinking, is there a resin that you can pour that is partially transparent? I was wondering what a pen might look like if it had a sort of that 3-dimensional look of a cat's eye marble.
You know, we did for our Pen Show After Dark line, we did some that were very translucent. And then you get different levels of opaqueness that came in with some of those. But as far as like a 3D kind of thing, I don't know.
Well, we've talked about this. You take an opaque resin, you take another color that happens to be translucent, and you do a dump in kind of dirty pour. And then into the mold they go. So you're going to end up with streaks of solid opaque and streaks of translucent throughout a vertical mold, as long as you don't mix it in the mold too much. But that's very temperature sensitive, so you'd be like at the very cusp. The hotter the resin is, the more color separation you get. So in that 12 to 15 minutes she has, if you wanted to keep that translucent color and the solid color separated, you want to come like right down to the wire as it's going into the mold.
You can.
So real quick, Elyce, what does it look like that you put them into? Is it like one of these tube things the hospital uses that makes it go round and round, or what?
For the actual mixing?
Yeah, that they put them in the machine. I don't know what the hell it is.
No, so what I do is I have great big tongue depressors, craft sticks. And so I just have, red Solo cups and mix them together and then just stir. And then I end up dividing up the main resin into littler cups for the different colors. I have done it where You have a whole bunch of A's, a whole bunch of B's.
Okay.
You get the colors set first and then you mix them. I prefer just doing like a great big mix and then dividing and then doing the color that way. We've used one of the special stirrers for the drill where it puts that in there and it stirs for you. My thing is that the resin is so sticky that once it goes in there, it's a matter of getting the resin off of there to be able to use it for another pour, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So what time, let's say Saturday morning pops up tomorrow morning, everybody's ready to get up and wake up except Mr. Jim. And there you are. What time do you go to work in the morning? Whenever you want?
Yeah, pretty much. Just whenever I get up and moving. Jim's usually out in the shop at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So usually by the time I get up, then it's time for his breakfast. So I'll go like, hey, you want some breakfast? You know, and make breakfast. And then once we do all that and have coffee, and then I can go play with the resin. So
yeah, I remember one time when Jim used to, probably still doesn't know, who knows, that he used to be 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning before work and making pens because it was only him. And he had to get so many ready and people were ordering, and he would try to explain to them, well, you know, it's going to take this long. Why so long? Well, there's this many ahead of you and I've got to make the whole thing. So people thought it was like, oh, I'll have it to you in a few weeks. And I kept telling them that's not going to happen. So, yeah. So does he still do that?
Oh, he's out in the shop at 4 o'clock in the morning, generally. Like, he'll get up, he'll watch some YouTube, and then he's out in the shop. And then that's his solitude time where he doesn't have to handle all of the crazy at the house. So, because we're all the crazy is asleep. So,
How does the team, go ahead, Doc.
So when
Go ahead.
this is something I have a little bit of familiarity with as a dentist. When we would mix, and we weren't mixing A and B epoxies, we were mixing methacrylates. The problem is when you mix them, you incorporate air into that. And so the way in which dentistry would deal with that is we had these vibratory stations where you put the thing on, vibrate the bubbles to the top. Then we would put it into a pressurized container because to prevent the monomer from coming off and giving you surface porosity. I guess it's different, but how do you stop bubbles from getting incorporated into the epoxy when you're mixing it? Because a pressure system is not going to be enough to take it out.
so what I end up doing is, because it's just me mixing, once I get the colors incorporated, I do let it sit for a while.
All right.
You can actually watch the resin just kind of do this,
Yeah.
and the bubbles come up.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we have these little vibratory platforms that we would use, but it might actually affect the color interface where you guys are trying to get specific or kind of the same patterns out. So I just wondering.
Well, Joe, the other factor is even with the pressure pot, you're putting it under 60 psi at minimum. And at 60 psi, you're not eradicating the bubbles. You're shrinking them to such a microscopic level where they don't matter, right?
Gotcha. Every once in a while, do you come across a rod that you have a porosity in when you're machining it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, it happens.
it happens, and it's a matter of making sure that the pots are, you know, at the right pressure, making sure they're not losing pressure. We did have one of the newer pots, it would just lose pressure. And even though it was still under the right numbers, you still had rods that came out with lots of bubbles.
Yeah, we also had little pots that we would fill completely up to the top with water, then put a lid on it and then compress the lid because fluid's not compressible, and that would jack the pressure up real high. But it wasn't dependent upon some type of gas or air going into the pot to pressurize it. But this was only done on a small scale. The bigger pots we used air. So
Right.
Cool. And back to Elyce one more time. So, do Heinz Pen Company use any of your blanks to make, I know it's a dumb question, but make pens with as well?
To make what?
make the pens with, or you just sell them to different people that want to buy them?
We do both.
Blanks.
We do both.
Okay.
Yep. And then I know, you know, like I've got my Starry Night stuff, and Jim will be like, hey, I need some rods. Okay, here you go. You know, here to play with this. Or, you know, with the Falling in Love blanks that I did, that was a big one. I was like, okay, this one needs to get turned. I want to see what this looks like on the inside, because the outsides look different from the insides. So it's a matter of, you know, what do I need to change as far as the look to get the look what I'm envisioning in my head. So
Do you guys, is there a clear epoxy you use as well? An A and B that's crystal clear? Can you do that?
Alumilite is considered water clear.
Okay.
So it can go without any coloration at all. The only difficulty is, even with some UV stabilizers, it will still yellow over time.
Yeah, that's a problem.
There is no resin that'll stay 100% clear permanently. They all yellow. It's a matter of how long in between.
Right. So I guess what I was thinking of, is it possible if once you have one resin cured, can you embed that in a different uncured epoxy resin and get it to bond, or no?
Yes.
The reason why I'm asking, could you guys do something where you cast an epoxy shape, let's say some type of triangular cross-section shape, but embed that into a somewhat translucent epoxy and then turn that for a visual effect? You know what I mean? To have some core in there. I wonder if that, yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people do that now with 3D printed lattices, helixes.
Okay,
like that.
okay, right.
Now, Alumilite is a little finicky to get it to bond to itself. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, you need to, like if you were doing like a layered thing, you need to sand between layers in order to get it to bond. Make sure it's clear or precise or clean.
Much work, yeah.
But even then, you know, you're going to get a bunch of failures when doing it. It's just the nature of that. Epoxy itself will bond to itself much better than urethane resins will.
Okay. Interesting.
And back to Elyce. Now, here's one for you. Back at work, what is the hardest day ever you had at work when you thought you had everything in order, then they all fall apart? You know, like, I'm going to do this today, and then this comes the next, this and this. But somewhere down the line, number 2 or 3 didn't work out right, but you didn't catch it till later, and you're through with the whole process. Does that mean you have to scratch the whole project and start all over again?
Yeah, pretty much. So like this one project I'm working on right now, I was mixing like a really dark gray and I was putting some sapphire blue in. I ended up pouring way too much blue in, and it took over the whole color. So that whole round ended up, they're going to be, you know, like test rounds, you know. I think I'm going to call them, you know, like cloudy skies or something. It's all like variations of grays, you know. So, but yeah, if you mix, you know, if you put too much of something in, or it's the wrong color, yeah, you just kind of have to like just let it go and start again.
What time does work start in the morning?
Well, my real job starts at 7:15, and then with the resin stuff, it's just generally whenever I get up in the morning after I have coffee.
Do you have a lot to do?
Yes. So currently, I'm working on a big project with Narwhal that we'll be finishing up. And then I've got to do some website maintenance for the rods on the website too. So
another thing I was curious, is it easy for, I'm not mentioning names, but for other pen makers to take your ideas away? Because I remember once when Jim made me some pens, and I've never seen them before, and then later, I got a hold of Jim. I said, this person made a pen like yours. So I was just wondering, the colors and everything, does that still go on today, or is that okay to do, or what?
Unfortunately, yes, but at the same time, like all the resin work is going to be completely unique to the maker. So like, what I might do with the resin and what Jim might do, we could use the same colors and everything. The pour is going to be completely unique because of the whole artist part of that. So, I've had people, pretty much copy resin, and, I'm like, hey, it is what it is. And
Yeah.
you can't really worry too much about it, as
Even
long
with
as you're true to
copyrights.
yourself and you're not the one copying what other people are doing,
Even with copyrights, it's hard. A copyright's only as good as your ability to prosecute.
Right.
If you don't have the money to go after people, the copyright doesn't matter. It was, believe it or not, there was a guy in Eastern Europe I found out was selling my instructional book with his name on it.
Really?
Yeah, I found out from some folks, and I says, listen, you tell him I said, put my name back on it, he can still sell it. I don't need the money for it, but just make sure you give proper credit where it's due. I couldn't believe he was doing that. It's all enough to sell it, but then to take my name off of it. So I told him, put my name back on and go ahead and sell it. What am I gonna do? He did it.
Yeah.
So did he do it?
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to share with us while working with the Heinz Pen Company?
We are such a unique group. Like, I would not have asked for a better group to work with. And Jim and I are peas in a pod where the pen stuff goes. I originally, started doing it to help him and found something that I really genuinely enjoy. I enjoy doing the resin. And actually having somebody in-house that supports that process. And really our house is Pen Central. Like, we have, the pen area, we've got the shop, we've got my resin area, and it's all right there at the house. So to have a partner that is 100% backing you is amazing.
So anything else, because later I'm going to contact you and ask you a few more things and see what your thoughts of it, and then maybe bring you back again with the incredible Jay.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Cool. So real quick, Mr. Jim, when are you coming back home? Are you out of town?
I'll be back home Sunday night.
So Elyce, are you getting, because I don't even know this one, Thanksgiving and Christmas, y'all get a lot of orders in?
For the pens, yes. For the resin, I'm not sure yet, because Starry Night is so new that we don't have a history to go on. So
okay. All right. Does anybody want to ask any questions real quick?
I have a quick question.
Mr. Mike Green.
I'm going to jump in here. I know we haven't done it yet, and let's see if I can make this work. Here, let me see. I want to share my screen.
Click on the green link.
That one. There we go. Have I got it?
Not yet.
Oh, wait. Share. Okay, pick which one. How about that?
There you go.
There we go. By the way, here's Starry Night Resin's website. And here's a couple of your resins. I don't know. Do you want to say anything about any of these real quick? About your process or your inspirations?
So on the website, for each of the pictures, I've tried to include the link to my inspiration from that resin. So like the California Dreamin' in the middle, that one,
right.
It turned out, just beyond awesome. I used pigments and micas on that one, and it just really looks like the coastline. I mean, like, I was really happy with that one.
Right,
And then the bougie
definitely.
ombre that's next to it, that one was just fun. Like, and my daughter makes fun of me because I say bougie, and and it just and I get the mama. So that is just fun to say. But yeah, just any kind of pictures, and then I just kind of go with it from there and see what happens. So
Look at this California Dreaming. That's a cool looking one.
Yeah.
that one, the blank turned out just amazing. Like it looks like different levels of the ocean, like just stunning.
Really nice looking. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Definitely.
So
Definitely beautiful.
am I correct to think that one rod makes one pin typically?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
Unless
Right,
you blow apart and then it takes two, but
I try not to talk about that. But yeah, if I blow it, like if I were to make a pen with, say, this rod, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but looking
Yeah.
at the boogie oogie here, but you got enough to make a pen, but if you blow one of the bigger parts, there's not enough left to make a pen. You have to go get another one and try to cut out a piece that's the right part. And yeah, it can be fun. And then I think, like here, as she was saying earlier, some of these, she does these smaller square pieces. It usually takes two of those to make a pen if you're making a full pen, right? These are the shorter ones. So, but usually, yes, these rods here, like the Boogie Oogie ones and the California Dreaming ones. I don't want to leave that one. That's those rods that's enough to make a pen right there. So each one's going to be a pen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted, okay, well, shoot, I'm misnavigating. Also, of course, I don't want to leave this out. If you go to this place called Heinz Pen Company, I don't know, whatever. You can look around, and in here, I'm just kind of grabbing. There may be better spots to look, but there's some in-stock pens here, and you can pick Starry Night resin pens. And I'm not going to try to go through them, but there's page 1 of 9. But there's a lot of different possibilities here. And of course, you also, oops, I grabbed the wrong piece. I wanted to get
and
to
the other
this
thing
here.
that I can do
And
too
the
is
mermaid series here as
do
well.
my mermaids. Yep.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
here's the mermaid series. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. You've got
you.
the starrynightresins.com, I believe it is. And of course, heinzpens.com, both of those. So, it's one thing to talk about these things, but to actually see them like this, when you look at like the California Dreaming one here, it's just, when you see this, it is just, amazing. Of course, you've got the, there's a lot going on here. Oh, here's the Starry Night Resins again here, or the California Dreaming one again.
Yeah.
Here's a bigger picture. To actually see them and is the key here.
Yep.
Right. Okay, I'll let that
It's amazing that you can get any level of reproducibility. It's pretty amazing. I remember years ago when I was looking at some of those, ever see marbled papers that they lay the paper on top of the surface of water and they pick the paint up? I didn't even know you can get reproducibility with that. It's just really amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a matter of just figuring out how the resin works. And I know I was teaching one of our friends how to do it, and she was just like, "You're so zen when you pour resin." And she goes, "I'm here going, we gotta get the time, and Jim's usually over there going, you gotta get the time." I'm like, we'll get there, it's okay.
Well, it's good that you can chill it and get some extra work, because we would do stuff like that too. In the old days, when we would put certain caps on teeth, the cement we would use is something called zinc phosphate, and we'd have to take a glass slab that we mix it on and chill it. And that would slow down the reaction long enough for us to get it in somebody's mouth. We don't use that anymore, but yeah, things are. And Jim, I'm assuming, or at least when that sets, is that an exothermic reaction? In other words, it liberates heat?
Yes.
Okay.
Quite a bit. It'll get up to, I think, about 160 to 180 degrees peak.
Yeah, all right.
And then start to cool down.
That's also
You
why
you want to pour it at around 95, 96 degrees for best color separation. Once it gets to about 107, it's like taffy. You can't use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else likes to ask the lady of the hour? Any questions? We're on Jeopardy. No, go ahead. Well, Jim, would you like to say anything before we go?
Nope, I was just here because I haven't seen her in about 7 days, so gives me a chance to snoop in. And I knew Joe was going to have a couple technical questions she wouldn't be able to answer, so I wanted to be on hand to be
Yeah,
able to.
not doing it on purpose. You know that, Jim. It's just.
Oh,
curious.
no, and then that wasn't the intent. I just,
Oh, I know.
You're curious like me. You want to know the hows and whys and the
Yeah.
behavior behind it. And I've been working with her a bit longer than she has. She's figured out how to, get the colors the way she wants it, how to get it into the rod and repeat it. She doesn't really worry about, okay, why does it heat up this high, or can I make it stick to itself, or
It looks like she's doing great.
Oh yeah.
Really is.
She's,
I mean, very
she's knocking it
impressive
out of
work.
the park.
Yeah, she knows her stuff. You got to give her that. Yep. Well, Mr. Jim, how are you feeling before we go?
I'm glad this is my last damn show this year. I'll tell you that. I added it up, and we did 2 maker shows. We went to the one in SoCal she mentioned. We went to one in Tennessee. If you take those and all the pen shows I did, this is show 16 right now.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm beyond done. Next year we won't be doing this many. It takes too much. And
Are you doing one? Are you doing one for Christmas? Are you going to take off?
No, we're not doing a show for Christmas. This is the last show of the year.
Okay.
The next show is Philly in January. We are
Okay.
taking a trip to Chicago on the 1st. If you've been paying attention, Atlas Stationers is now stocking our pens.
Yeah.
They've got 9 models now. We're going on the 1st to do a takeover. So there'll be a lot of social media live streams and Q&As and stuff like that.
I like Atlas, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it'll be Elyce, Francisco, and myself heading up.
All right, folks. One last chance. Dun, 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 dun. Don't be bashful.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I do appreciate it.
Thanks for
Well,
having
thank
me.
you, Elyce, for coming. And I'm going to get a hold of you later, if that's okay. I
Yeah,
need to ask
definitely.
you something. Yeah. I don't want to talk to you, Jim, just you. Okay. So just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah. So, hey, thanks everybody for coming. And then, Doc, I'm going to message you later because there's something I want to ask you about writing. Okay. So, folks, thanks a lot. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great day, you all. Y'all are amazing, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye bye. Thank you, Liz.